Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today, we're going to share Wendigo horror stories. First story. I don't like deer. This is my first time really talking about this, so please excuse any weird phrasing or spelling errors. I've marked out my name and my associates' names for privacy, as I'm sure they wouldn't want to be connected to something like this. I used to work in a coffee shop. It was a run-down joint nestled on the line between Florida and Alabama. It's situated right beside the highway and blocked off by lanky pines. The owners, I won't say their names due to privacy reason, erected it after they got married 15 years ago, but grew too old to take care of it. They ended up giving it to their snobby millennial son-in-law who flunked out of business school 4 years ago. He took all the walls down and got rid of the stained brown carpets and yellow walls. Made all 4 walls completely glass and the floors white shiplap. It looks good, better than it used to be, but completely wasted when you remember that it's a shitty coffee joint with 3 employees in the middle of nowhere across from an Exxon gas station. The manager, the snobbish son-in-law, we'll call him Robert, rarely came around after he realized how slow business really was. It was kind of sad, actually. He poured all of his effort into it only to turn 25 or so customers a day. Now Robert only comes in to deliver my check or take a dozen pastries to the sheriff's office a few miles down the way. If it sounds bad, it's because it is. I work with 2 other people, but they can't afford to put us all on one shift like they did before. So now I work the night shift, coming in around 3 p.m. and leaving at 9 or so. We close for an hour in between each shift so that we can brew more coffee and bake pastries. My coworker, Molly, a fake name for said purposes, would almost always come in late for the graveyard shift at basically 11 p.m. But it didn't matter. Robert could care less as long as he didn't have to be there. Molly was really sweet, just not very bright, and obviously couldn't read a clock. So today I got in around 3:15 and entertained a few guests who came in for black coffee before a football game. That brought in a bit of a rush, since football was the only notable thing this shitty town does on weekdays. I had a few families come in for hot chocolate and warm vanilla lattes. Those were fun to make since I have all the time in the world to practice my latte art. I made a tiny lily pad and flower on a little girl's hot chocolate. She didn't seem impressed, and I wished I drew a middle finger instead. The rush ended at 7:30 with an older gentleman with tan skin who ordered hot water in a to-go cup. Just the water? I always ask just in case, so I don't have to reopen the tab. Too many indecisive bitches who changed their mind with their card in the slot already. He looked at me for a moment and nodded. Yeah, that's it for me. Do you need anything? I stopped for a second and met his eyes. They were dark and round, big dark bags under the eyelashes. He had wrinkles around his eyes and brows. Heavy beard under his lips. I felt my face grow hot. No, sir, I'm good. Thank you, though. I tried to avert my eyes to his check, which I then realized was free since he only ordered water. You're all set. Stay warm out there. I smiled politely and turned back towards my barista bar, cleaning off my stir spoon with a rag. After a few seconds of silence, I turned, and he was still standing watching me clean. Is there anything else I can get you? My stomach might turning. I hate this. Being here in the middle of nowhere by myself. No one around if someone like this strolled in. I glanced up at the Exxon across the road. The lights were beginning to switch off with the sunset. The clerk must be closing up. I had a can of wasp spray under the register, and I eyed it quickly. He shimmied from shoe to shoe, big eyes looking into my soul. What time do you get off tonight? He talked like he knew me personally, like we were supposed to catch a movie afterwards. I flinched, not wanting to tell him the truth. I work a double tonight, so I get off at 2 a.m. Late hours. I nodded respectfully and tried to leave the situation by heading toward the back. Why do you guys put all this glass in here? He called after me as I entered the back kitchen. I pulled my phone out and set it up to call 911 if need be. I set my phone on the counter and faced him, finger hovering over the green call button. You can never be too safe. More natural light. Thought it would bring more people in. I invented. He smiled a bit back at me, looking around the empty restaurant. Did it? I laughed humorlessly and shook my head. He finally nodded and started towards the glass door in the front. He took a glance up and down the door and then slid outside with a wave. I breathed out the air I had been holding in for his stay. I cleared the numbers off my phone and brought it over with me to Coffee Bar. Robert said when I was hired they had a zero-tolerant policy on phone usage while on the clock. But Robert plays BitLife in the corner when it's slow, so I stopped caring real fast. I scrolled through Facebook aimlessly and ended up watching a few videos on YouTube. The time ticked on with no one passing through. I thought I saw a car passing by, but it was the Exxon employee going home. I waved widely goodnight, knowing he would see me through the glass. He offered a half wave back and turned down the road into the darkness. Something stirred behind him in the trees. My eyes darted up the pine tree behind his car, and I noticed it swaying slightly. Then it stopped. I felt a cold chill race up my back. When I say we are in the middle of nowhere, it's not an exaggeration. The gas station and I were directly across from each other on the county road. On all sides of us were thick woods until about 10 miles when you finally hit a Dollar General. Then another 15 or so and the only school in the county. I live about 40 minutes away, so the drive isn't too bad out here. It's just so isolating, especially when the gas station guy leaves. If there were bears around here, they would be around here for sure. The only light in the woods for miles would draw them in with the promise of food. There had been a few animal problems in the past few weeks. The sheriff's office would come in after shift talking about farmers having their chickens killed in the night. There wasn't much they could do but show up to the farmers' houses after the fact with guns drawn. They hadn't shot down anything yet, but the townspeople talk all the time about finding huge footprints in their soil. I hate the thought of a bear finding me out here. Wasp spray probably wouldn't do too well against one of those beasts. I tried to push the thought out of my mind. I drew on a napkin and listened to Frank Ocean for another hour. Finally, 9 rolled around. I stood up and started cleaning off the counters and tables, cranking my music up louder. It was finally time to close everything down. I was jamming out, scraping crumbs off the pillows of the lounge seating when my phone dinged. I slid over to the coffee bar, already knowing it would be Molly explaining again why she was late this time. Probably her mom forgot to take out the garbage or her boyfriend needed a ride to Walmart. I flipped my phone over and my stomach dropped. TXT, Molly // work. Hey girl, I hate to do this, but my brother is sick and gave me a stomach bug, so I can't come in tonight. Can you cover my shift? I'll bring you food next shift. Me. I slammed my phone down and closed my eyes. Cover her shift an hour before I'm supposed to get off? That means I really won't get off till 3 a.m. Jesus Christ. I called Robert, who didn't answer for the first 5 rings. Robert, this is Rob. Me. Hey, Molly called out last minute and wants me to cover her shift. Okay. Me. So can you come in so that I can go home? Can't tonight. Have you tried Scott? Me. Heaviside, yes, I've called Scott, and he's only available for mornings. Well, hey, extra hours, right? Good luck. I fought every urge to not scream into the phone as he disconnected. I decided to sit down and reevaluate every decision that led me here. Yes, I do need more hours. Hospital bills won't pay themselves. But I wish I didn't live here. I spent the next few hours grinding more coffee beans and fantasizing about having a cute apartment in a busy city somewhere. This and 2 vanilla chai lattes occupied my time for the next few hours. It was finally midnight, and I decided Robert wouldn't know if I closed early, and even if he did, I didn't care. Good luck, dickhead. I began switching the lights off and packing away the stale pastries in the glass cabinet below the coffee bar. Finally, I headed towards the glass doors. The locks were these long metal bars that go into a hole in the wood floors, meaning the lock mechanism was all the way at the bottom of the glass doors. I slid the glass door completely shut and kneeled down. This one was such a pain in the ass, but it's the only way to keep glass doors locked without looking trashy, as Robert says. Like the neon blue coffee sign by the highway wasn't trashy. I sat on my knees and fiddled with the lock, hovering it over the hole a few times to line it up properly. Finally, the lock fell into place and slid in with a faint click. I shimmied the door a bit to ensure it was locked properly. Satisfied and numb-legged, I finally stood up. I was met with the stare of something on the opposite side of the glass. I yelped instinctively, clapping my hand over my mouth. It had two huge and vividly orange irises that met mine instantly, almost like it had been staring already, and then I came into view. Its face was pressed against the glass forcefully, pale skin flat against it. I slowly realized it was an animal. A deer. It was a doe with huge orange eyes. At least that's what my instinct told me, since it looked more like a doe than anything else. I stared at it for a few moments more, not knowing what to do. At first I thought it was dead, since it was so morbidly still. But then I remembered it was still standing, and its body was moving fluidly with breaths in and out calmly. I finally broke my stare and stepped backwards, glancing at its body. It was big for a doe, at least I think so. I'm not too keen on animals like her, but it felt way too big and long to be normal. Finally, after nature's longest staring contest, I decided it probably wouldn't come up to a man-made structure like this unless it needed help. Animals have a way of knowing when humans can help them or not, and this one decided I could give it some help. I turned back to the coffee bar, grabbing my phone to call the sheriff's office. They have an animal control unit that adored animals. They would be able to help it. I picked up the phone and dialed the number. Ring, ring, ring. I was still watching the doe, who was watching me too, face still plastered uncomfortably against the glass. Big eyes not blinking. Thank you for calling County Sheriff's Office. If this is an emergency, please hang up and call 911. We are currently out of office or dealing with a previous issue. Please leave a message and we'll get back to you shortly. Thank you. I turned towards the kitchen, glancing at the wall clock. Since it's such a small town, they don't often stay at the office at this hour. I sighed and figured leaving a voicemail would help either way. Maybe someone would come in after whatever accident is holding them up and would come for help. Hey, guys, it's from a coffee shop down by the state line. I might have something weird for you guys. I'm looking for animal control to come help me with something. A doe came up to the shop, and it looks like it's in trouble. Its eyes are like super orange dash. I turned again towards the glass to check on the animal again. It was sliding sideways, shuffling its legs and keeping its face pressed against the glass, eyes staying on me. It was shimmying sideways to the right slowly. It caught me off guard and I stopped talking. What? Its eyes are orange and it's acting really, really weird. It might be sick or something. The doe was catching speed, legs wobbly as it smeared spit across the glass and slid to the entire other side of the store, never breaking eye contact. At this point, its lips were pulling back on the glass, revealing its mouth, which was full of blood and teeth. Perfectly square teeth. They looked like human teeth. What? I breathed, forgetting I was leaving a message on the phones of very religious conservative police officers. Sorry, something's wrong with it. I think it's really sick and you guys should, probably come out and see. Please. I don't want to mess with it just in case. Please hurry. I finally snapped out of it and hung up the phone. I missed the counter with the phone since I was watching the doe, and my phone fell to the floor with a crack. The doe stopped. It froze quite literally like a deer in headlights. It was halfway to the middle door on the right-hand side of the store. I watched her, and she watched me. It felt like years that we stared at each other in stillness and silence. Then it began again, sliding itself across the glass, but with an unknown speed and purpose. I don't know why, but I grew terrified of this doe, and for some reason wanted the doors to be locked. I slid across the floor on my knees, shaking hands, trying to lock the door into place before it was there. She slid across the ground, still hovering a few feet above my crouched figure in height. As I tried to lock the goddamn door, I couldn't help but look at it. Something felt so wrong. It was moving so quickly, and its legs couldn't keep up well. Speaking of her legs, they didn't quite look right. They were very long, and the fur around them had been what seems like singed off, leaving dark red and brown skin underneath. I was about to lock the door with her about 6 feet away when I finally realized why its legs looked so unusual. Instead of hooves in the dirt, this doe had ankles. joints that connected its skinny legs to two flat, pale feet. Feet! Feet! What? I finally yelled out, my skin going freezing. My surprise was short-lived, and I didn't have time to think. The door was beginning to open. I clamped my fingers around the lock and the other side of the door, forcing it closed. I looked above me where the doe had lodged its hand, yes hand, into the crack between the two doors. It stared at me, intently not moving. I didn't know what to do. I used all of my strength to force the two panes of glass shut over its fingers. 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 I don't know how, but somehow I had the power to force them out of the crack, and the door slammed shut. I slid the lock in with tears streaming down my face. What? I fell back on my ass, watching it. It looked unfazed as its fingers dripped with blood. It just watched me unravel. What are you? I couldn't help but ask in fear. It didn't move or respond. Just sat in the dirt, letting its bloodied hand drag across the glass. Then it smiled. Its human teeth grew visible beneath its pink lips. I almost lost my latte all over the floor, just mopped. It started sliding again, but with a new intensity towards the complete other side of the glass to the other unlocked door. Luckily, I was faster, and I scrambled over, locking it fluidly before it even reached the halfway mark. We sat on opposite sides of the glass and watched each other intently. I have no idea how. I think it's because all of my adrenaline had been spent up crying, but somehow I ended up drifting off. I only woke up when my head smacked the side of the marble coffee bar. That's when my eyes flew open and the doe was not in front of me. I flew to my feet, blood rushing to my head. How am I so stupid? How do I fall asleep like that? I scanned the surrounding area, shaking like a leaf. The only remnants of the doe was the spit and blood trail across the glass doors around me. I felt my heart start to slow down. Jesus Christ, that was the worst thing to ever happen to me. I took a deep breath and decided morning shift could deal with cleaning the glass, and my time here was done. I waited about 15 more minutes, just scanning the night around me. The trees and highway were bathed in neon blue light, illuminating my lonely Ford in the parking lot. But still no sign of the doe. It was now or never in my mind. I started formulating a plan. I would have my keys between my fingers, Walmart parking lot style, and make a mad dash towards my car. Then I would lock it immediately and drive like a bat out of hell until I reached home. Yes, good plan. I never parked very far away from the staff and trance out back. Probably only 100 feet or so away. I sighed heavily and picked up my phone. The entire front was cracked all the way down, blurring the LED lines into jagged pink and blue lines. I managed to activate Siri and dialed the sheriff's number again. It rang and rang. I hung up. On my own, I finally picked myself up and checked my surroundings one more time. All clear. I took this as my sign and started towards the staff door behind the kitchen. I didn't hesitate and swung the door open, keys in hand. The air outside was freezing and completely still. My car sat across the parking lot facing the trees. Only 100 more feet, and I would be safe and warm and headed home to deal with whatever trauma I'll have after this. I was running when I saw it. The tree right above my car was swaying back and forth heavily, the only thing moving in the woods. No. I stopped in my tracks, realizing what was happening. Finally, the familiar bloody fingers began shimmying down the tree, leading itself downwards toward the ground. I saw the top of its head finally, illuminated with blue light. It looked like stitches trailing all the way down its spine, bloody and raw. It was moving at incredible speed, climbing face first down the tree. It took me a few seconds to react, and in that time it had landed on all fours on the grass right beside the driver's side of my car. It paused, its orange eyes meeting mine once again. Except it didn't look like a doe anymore. Besides the pelt of speckled white and brown around its body, it looked like a person, or maybe something in between a doe and a person, if that was a real thing. Its skin was half fur, half charred naked flesh. Its teeth were bare now, no lips holding them back. Just pink flesh around its face, like it had been cut open. I couldn't help it. I screamed. It came out of me before I knew it was there, and I started running. Back to the store. I could hear its heavy footfalls behind me, extremely fluid and only a few inches away from my heels. I flung myself inside, holding the door handle closed. It was obviously messing with the door on the other side, trying hungrily to open it. Even though it was struggling, it made no noise. No panting, no grunting. It was soundless. Like a hunter. It was hunting me. Then I heard it. So clear I almost let go of the handle entirely. Hey, sorry I'm late. I had to stop and get gas. It was Molly. Molly, right outside that door. What? Is all I could say, tears threading my eyelashes again. Yep, I'm sorry again. I already talked to Robert, so you're good to leave. Relief. Sweet relief that I wasn't alone. Then panic. Molly, you have to leave. There's something outside, Dash. Can you let me in? It's freezing out here. My blood ran cold. Yes, of course, I have to let her in. I wanted to so badly in that moment. To open the door and let Molly in on this nightmare. My grip on the door loosened. Then it hit me. Molly is sick. She wasn't coming in at all tonight. Why is she suddenly here? Can you let me in now? Please. Her voice was strained and wrong. It was pitched so much lower than her normal bubbly voice. That wasn't Molly. My grip was too loose with my confusion. The door was flung open. I scrambled backwards on my ass again. It stood on two legs, and I finally got a good image of it. It was huge, had to be 6 feet tall and skinny as the pine trees behind it. It had something under its head, well under the dough head. Something that resembled the jaw of a human, except it was unhinged and swinging from side to side with its motion. Blood dripped onto the floor. Its body was wiry, and I could see all the organs behind the papery skin. And that's all I saw before my fear made me uncap the wasp spray behind me and shoot that shit right in its face. It stumbled backward for a second, and I took that chance to get off my ass and run like no one's business. I leaped over the coffee bar and started unlocking the glass door. It started sliding across the slick floor with inhuman speed, and the lock was not unlocking. Screamed, trembling so hard the lock slipped out of my fingers. Somehow, and God, don't ask because I have no clue, I managed to slip it upwards and the glass slid to the side. I got on my feet and yanked the door shut behind me. I didn't turn but felt the glass shatter to pieces only a few feet from my back. Shards of sharp glass embedded themselves into the back of my flannel as I propelled myself forward towards the Exxon. They have an outdoor bathroom that was always unlocked that I used every now and then, and I've never wanted to be in that tiny, smelly bathroom more in my entire life. Before my feet hit the asphalt of the road, I felt it. Hand on my back, on my collar, strong, forceful hands on my shirt, yanking me backwards. No, I cried, snatching my arms forward, desperately raking my feet towards the highway. I felt my limbs crying out in pain as its nails dug into my flesh. No, I thought it came from my own mouth, and then realized I hadn't opened it again. It wasn't me. This thing has said it, and it sounded just like me. It was copying me. This is what broke me, and I finally launched myself over the threshold into the road. It lost its grip finally, and I twisted around to face it, crawling backwards out of the road. My elbows hit the soft dirt, and I fell backwards, pulling my legs into a ball. It geared up its body to leap. I shut my eyes, and it was gone. A huge gush of air zoomed between us, followed by the squealing of brakes. The doe was launched yards and yards away into the woods. I heard the sickening crack as its spine hit the bark of a pine tree. I watched it tumble lifelessly into the brush below. How the pickup truck missed me is completely beyond me. Did it hit a person? Was that a person? The guy driving was screaming, eyes bloodshot and huge. His pupils were huge too. I wearily stood up, grabbing the rolled-down window to look at my savior. No, I shook my head and leaped into the bed of the truck. I asked the guy to drive me to the sheriff's office, which he finally did after I convinced him that I wasn't going to turn him in for vehicular manslaughter. He had been high as a kite, speeding up to 70 on a 35 road with his lights off. That's why I didn't see him until he hit the doe. I really didn't turn him in, not that he gave me the chance. Once I got out the back of his truck, he sped off, turning his lights on and getting the hell out. Luckily, two of the officers were there, awake and overwhelmingly worried when I showed up with my shirt ripped almost off and blood all over me. They went over with their full unit and animal control, but I didn't go with them. Apparently, they followed the blood trails from the shop into the woods, and then it stopped completely. Out of nowhere, right at the woods line. They saw where my shirt ripped by the highway and collected it for me. They ran samples on the blood found. It didn't match anyone. They had to close down the coffee shop since I told Molly what happened, and we both quit. Scott and Robert were the only ones working, but it didn't take long before the horror story reached Scott, who then quit mid-shift. The town talked for sure. People came to my house asking about it. The police chalked it up to being a bear or a wolf or some large animal that had rabies and was chasing me around. This was the story they went with, writing it in the papers. Telling my family. I told them what I saw, and they decided that I was too terrified and traumatized to be seeing things correctly. Though there was a glint in the sheriff's eye when I told them what it looked like. Something inside of him believed me. I moved to Seattle a week later, taking out a loan and renting a studio right in the heart of the city, surrounded by people. I don't work anything but day shifts anymore, and I haven't had a chai latte since. I keep the blood-stained scrap of my flannel in my wallet as a constant reminder that somehow I'm alive. I've told no one except my girlfriend who moved with me, and now you guys. We keep the lights on in the apartment constantly, even when we sleep. And I haven't passed a bottle of wasp spray without having a panic attack since. Truly, I don't know what happened, or what that doe really was. I don't understand anything that happened, except that now I have crippling anxiety when nighttime rolls around, and that I nearly piss myself every time I see a deer of any sort. My girlfriend found a therapist for me, and I go every now and then. But I don't really talk about what happened, just how alone I feel since it happened. That no one can relate to me, and no one else would ever believe me. Every now and then I get a call from the sheriff who is genuinely concerned with my well-being after seeing me in that state that night. The most recent time he called, I didn't pick up as I finally fell asleep that night, which was incredibly rare for me to fall asleep without sleeping pills. I woke up the next morning and groggily checked my phone. He called once but missed. He left a message though. Hey, it's me again. Just wanted to check up on you. I haven't seen you in a while. I didn't realize you left so quickly. I didn't have time to say goodbye. You should come visit again soon. We miss you here. Take care. I listened to it probably 12 times. I played it for my girlfriend, and we both listened to it a few more times after comparing it to the other messages he had left. But she confirmed exactly what I thought too. Something was off about this one. It was lower pitched and strained. Not quite his voice. Second story. My son brought something home from the woods. My husband and I always wanted our son to be adventurous. We wanted to watch him grow up asking questions about everything, seeking out answers, and looking for adventure. It seems like whenever parents have a deep desire for how they want their children to be, their children instinctively know and go the complete opposite direction. As Sam grew up, he became very introverted and would actively ask when it was time for bed. He loved to sleep, and our doctor gave a lot of explanations. All the illnesses had been checked and crossed out before he said, I think he just likes to get away from reality. He likes his dreams more than he enjoys life. This was at the age of 8. This actually depressed us as parents. What could be so wrong, so uninteresting about his life that he would come home and just sleep? The doctor recommended that we plan family activities that were geared towards him as a way to engage him in life. Give him something to be excited about after school. So, for our very first trip, we decided we would go on a hike. The mountains were about an hour away, and we considered this a mild introduction to our new family habit. When we told Sam where we were going, he was ecstatic. We knew then that hiking had been the right activity. On Saturday, we threw together some backpacks, lunch, water, and even a magnifying glass so Sam could inspect everything closely. He was so excited the entire way there. We were all thrilled. When we parked at the trailhead, Sam leapt out of the car and almost ran up the trail without us. I had to call him back so we could keep an eye on him. The hike was short, maybe half a mile, but Sam tried to run it like a marathon. We kept calling for him to come back and check out this bird, or this butterfly, or the log that looked like a grandpa's face. He would come and look to humor us, but then run ahead. Eventually, we gave up trying to point things out and let him just run through the woods. We were pleased that he had taken so well to the trip. For once, Charlie and I felt like we knew what we were doing as parents. Anyone who's a parent knows how that feels. We got to the end of the trail and ate our lunch. We were at a ledge along the mountain that was more like a hill. The sun was high overhead, and we could see over the trees for miles. Sam quickly downed his lunch, and we let him run off into the trees. Not too far, I warned him. He obeyed, and we could always see him. From the rock where we sat, I watched Sam while Charlie went to the bathroom. I watched Sam pick up sticks, swing them at bushes and tree trunks until the stick broke, then pick up another one. He picked one up that was too short to be swung, but he smiled wide at it and ran around with it in front of him, using both hands. Finally, he ran over to me and said, "Mom, feel this stick. It feels so cool." "Oh yeah." I grinned, taking the stick from him. It was in the shape of a Y, and when I grabbed one of the sides of the Y, it was perfectly smooth. It looked like someone had taken a knife and whittled a bigger branch down into this smooth, slingshot-shaped stick. The two sides of the Y were curved, almost like bicycle handlebars. "That's very smooth," I said to encourage him. He looked at me funny, then ran back into the woods to keep playing. We packed up lunch, stuffed everything back in the backpacks, and announced that we were ready to hike back. Sam came back without a fuss, and we began walking down the trail. Instead of running ahead, Sam lagged behind, still clutching the Y stick. He held it in front of him with both hands as before and was swinging it around slowly, as if it were a magnifying glass and he were searching for something. "Come on, Sam," Charlie encouraged gently when he stood in one place for too long. We both had to stop because he had fallen so far behind. He was pointing his stick into the trees, arms outstretched. He kept looking from the stick to the trees, as if trying to line something up. We both waited patiently for a few seconds, but the heat was getting to us, and we were ready for an air-conditioned car. "Sam, honey, let's go," I called. "Okay," he called back, but didn't move. Charlie sighed and walked back to him. He put his hands on both of Sam's shoulders and guided him down the trail. The whole time, Sam kept both hands firmly on the stick and tried his best to point it back towards the trees where he'd been looking. He didn't point it towards where he had been standing, I noticed later, but at a spot past the trail and into the trees. Always at one position. Charlie finally got him to where I was, and we kept walking. Sam eventually stopped pointing his stick and instead kept it down in front of him, both hands still being used to hold either side of the Y. We drove home, pleased that Sam was taking home a souvenir. Our day trip had worked. He was getting involved with life. We were one step closer to our adventurous son. Over the next couple of days, lots of things started happening. They all seemed disjointed and not connected in the moment. Later, memory would connect them for me. Sam went back to his sleeping routine. He would come home from school, go into his room, and play for a bit by himself while dinner was being made. I got him to work on homework, then served dinner when Charlie got home. After that, he went straight to bed by his own choice. This wasn't abnormal for him, so I wasn't any more concerned than usual. A few nights after we got home, I noticed that Sam's bedroom light was on even though he'd gone to bed hours ago. His door was closed, so I went to go and turn off his light for him. I figured he might have left it on when he fell asleep or something. The second I opened the door, Sam leapt off the floor and jumped into bed, like he knew he was in trouble. It was only 7 in the evening. I wasn't about to yell at him for not going to bed when he said he was. His rapid jump into bed had me worried, though. "Sam, what's up?" "Nothing," he said in that kiddish tone that screams I didn't do anything. I looked around the room and saw what I always saw. His toys were out and lined up in some game he must have been playing. Nothing was out of place or irregular. "You jumped up as soon as I came in. Anything wrong?" "No." "Okay," I said slowly, unsure of what else to say. He looked at me with untold terror in his eyes. "Are you sure nothing is wrong?" I pressed. I can hang out with you for a bit if you want. He stared right through me, his eyes wide. It took him a few seconds to reply. No, Mother, I'm going to bed now. See, can you turn out the light? I blinked. He's never called me Mother in his life. I should have pushed myself in and sat on his bed and talked until he admitted what was wrong. But I didn't. Charlie called my name, and it distracted me. I wished him a good night, turned off the light, and shut the door. Talking later on with Charlie about it, Charlie thought that maybe he had somehow discovered masturbation, even at his young age. When you rub around on the floor the right way, it just happens, Charlie told me. Apparently, that was how he had discovered it. So, I chalked the situation up to that. Sam also kept carrying that Y stick around everywhere. He always kept it within reach. During dinner, he kept it on the table. I told him that sticks don't belong on the dining room table. He kept it on his chair next to him. He took it to bed and kept it next to his head. He even took it to school. I tried fighting him on it once, but he claimed he was taking it to show and tell. I was about to insist that he leave it home, but he looked like he might cry if I came down firm. So, I let him on the condition that if his teacher mentioned it to me, that I'd make him leave it home. He agreed. One day, Charlie was taking out the garbage and the bag caught on the door jamb. The contents of the bag spilled all over the floor, and he quietly cursed and went to get another bag. That was when he found about 20 of Sam's toys in the trash. They varied from stuffed animals to action figures. Confused, Charlie asked me if I had thrown them away or was punishing Sam for something. I told him no and was equally puzzled. Sam, for some unknown reason, had been throwing his own toys away. Together, after dinner, we sat down with Sam at the table to ask about the toys. We saw it as a cry for help. They were selected, he said in response. They weren't doing a good enough job, so they were fired. Their time was up. Charlie told Sam that we don't throw toys away because they cost money and we don't waste things. Sam nodded, but I saw his hands clutch the sides of the Y stick tightly under the table. He was stressing. Something was going on. We ended the conversation on a light note, and Sam understood why we were upset. He promised not to throw away any more toys, then ran off to bed. I just remember thinking how strange the sentence was their time was up. That was an adult's line, not something you hear from kids. Sam's school sent an email to all the parents about 2 weeks after our hiking trip. The principal pleaded with parents to not let their children come to school if their child was sick, as there was a very serious flu going around the school. He even admitted that 5 teachers and 30 students had been sick over the last week alone. I showed it to Charlie, but he didn't find it as weird as I did. Hand sanitizer breeds super bugs, he shrugged. Just tell Sam to wash his hands more often. The final straw for me came a few nights later. It was a Wednesday night when I woke up for no reason. Charlie was snoring next to me, but in a lull between snores, I heard a whisper. Fear seized my throat, and I lifted my head off the pillow slowly to peer at the bedroom door. Someone moved in the dark, stumbling along. Someone small and short. Sam. Irritated, I got up and walked to the door. I saw Sam skip away, as if he were crossing a field of spiders and was desperate not to get any on his shoes. Sam, I whispered, walking out after him. I turned the corner into the family room, but he wasn't there. I heard bare feet race across the kitchen floor, and that made me angry. The little shit was hiding from me. I walked through the family room and noticed that the clock on the wall was way louder than usual. Or maybe I was hypersensitive because I was exhausted. When I entered the kitchen, Sam was facing me. He stood next to the fridge, and the small LEDs on it lit up his expression. He was terrified, and his little Y stick was pointed right at me. Sam, I hissed in annoyance. It's late. Go back to bed. I need water, he said, still looking at me with wide eyes. It was an obvious lie, but one not abnormal for kids caught up past their bedtime. Okay, then get some water, I sighed. Can you get it? He asked, still clutching the stick and pointing it my way. He must have seen my mom look, because he re-emphasized. Please. I walked forward, and that's when I noticed that he pointed the stick around me. He was pointing at something behind me. I whirled around really fast and stared into the empty darkness of the family room. The clock was still noticeably loud. It sounded like a person saying the actual words. Tick-tock, tick-tock. I looked around the room for a full 30 seconds. Nothing moved. What are you doing up, Sam? I asked, turning back to face him. He looked at me with real, true terror in his eyes. The stick was shaking in his hand. Sam, I hissed, snapping a little bit. It's not time yet, he stuttered, barely glancing at me. His gaze was transfixed beyond me. I'm not ready yet. For half a second, I wondered if he was pretending to sleepwalk. Then I wondered if he actually was sleepwalking. Then my tiredness washed over me, and I got irritable again. It's time for bed, I insisted, walking towards him. Still, he kept his eyes behind me, and the stick pointed into the family room. Okay, he said, defeated as I approached. He took slow, unwilling steps towards the family room. I stood behind him, watching to make sure he went to bed. I saw his head look back and forth, scanning the room as he entered. He was looking for something. He looked back at me with uncertainty. Suddenly, he screamed, "MOM! Watch out!" I instinctively whirled around, hands up and ready to attack whatever was there. Nothing but darkness and the far kitchen wall. I ground my teeth and glared down at him. He was still shaking, pointing his stick into the empty kitchen. I was beyond annoyed now. This stick had been out of control for weeks. I think you need a break from this, I said, snatching the stick from his hand. No, he screeched. Sam practically leapt at me, but I jumped out of the way. This was the only way, I assured myself. This stick wasn't healthy after all. Don't, he cried and yelled, following me through the family room and into the hall. All the attention that he'd pointed into the kitchen was now directed at me. He tried to jump and grab at the stick, but I held it above my head. I felt like a teenage older sibling, teasing my younger brother. But this was necessary. I regretted waking Charlie up, but I pushed my way into my room, tossed the stick onto the floor, and turned back to get Sam out. Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me, he demanded without taking a breath. I pushed him out and shut the bedroom door. I flipped the lock on the handle inside. What's going on? Charlie mumbled. I took the stick away. He was playing with it all night. I sighed, coming back to bed. Sam was pounding on the door. I convinced Charlie that we should ignore him, let him tire himself out, and tomorrow we would lecture him. He verbally agreed, though I could sense that he didn't agree inside. It took an hour, but Sam gave up, and we went to sleep. The next morning, my throat felt like I had swallowed sandpaper. The flu. Of course. My stomach rumbled and rousted me out of bed. I found myself starting to run to the master bathroom after my stomach turned nauseous. I puked up spaghetti from dinner the night before. Stumbling out of the bathroom, I had to move aside for Charlie, who couldn't make it to the toilet and threw up into the sink. Not you too, I sighed sympathetically. I haven't been this sick since I was a kid, he moaned, rinsing his mouth out. I rubbed my eyes, still tired from Sam's ordeal last night, and got in the shower with the lights off, hoping it would help my light sensitivity. Charlie decided to call in sick and rest for the day. I got ready for the day so I wouldn't lounge around in my pajamas all day, feeling even more sick. When I was completely ready, I unlocked the bedroom door and stepped out. Sam was nowhere in sight, which meant he had gone back to bed. Good. Sam, I hope you're getting ready for school, I said loudly. No reply. I went to his room and found the door shut as usual. I twisted the handle and pushed, but the door was stuck. The hell, I muttered quietly. Using my shoulder, I shoved hard against the door. I heard a clatter, then the door opened. As I entered, I saw three things right away. 1, a chair had been placed under the door handle, preventing it from opening easily. 2, the window was wide open, with the screen missing. And 3, Sam wasn't in his room. We called the police immediately after searching the house from top to bottom. If we hadn't called them, I have no idea where we would have started. Should we have driven around, looking for him? Called his friends' houses to see if they knew where he was? The police were helpful, and I spent a miserable half day sitting by the phone, puking my guts out and worrying about Sam. The police were out driving around, searching for Sam with his picture taped to their dashboards. Charlie was dead asleep when I wandered into the bedroom, debating lying down. But I couldn't sleep while Sam was missing. The sickness would let me, of course, but the guilt of falling asleep while this was going on was too much. I saw the stick, which had landed partially under the bed when I threw it last night. All this because of stick? Maybe the doctor was wrong. Maybe he did have something wrong with him, but it was mental, psychological. Maybe instead of a doctor, we should take him to a psychologist. In an attempt to stay awake, I decided to search the house for the 15th time. This time, I carried the stick with me. "Sam," I said, loud enough to be heard while I walked through the family room, kitchen, and to the stairs. Maybe he was hiding in the storage room downstairs. Maybe behind a few boxes. "Sam," I said again, "I have your stick. I'm sorry I took it. Please come out. Mommy is really worried. You aren't in trouble." I descended the stairs, and halfway down, I thought I heard him reply. It was faint, far away. The words were impossible to make out. "Sam," I cried desperately, spinning around on the stairs to try and figure out if he was upstairs or downstairs. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a leg dart around the corner at the bottom of the stairs, towards the storage room. My hunch was correct. I sped down the stairs and turned the corner. The door was closed. I tried to twist the handle, but he had locked it. "Sam, honey, open the door, please," I pleaded while reaching for the key at the top of the door frame. When he didn't unlock the door, I stuck the key in and twisted. The door popped open to reveal our pitch-black storage room. The room was in the middle of the house and had no windows. It contained our water heater and the control system for the heat and AC. The room was so large, though, that Charlie had built shelves for us to keep our seasonal decorations, our camping supplies, and extra food and water. "Sam," I said more quietly, feeling uneasy. Something about the room was getting to me. "What does the clock tick, Mother?" Sam said from somewhere in the room. I froze. The word mother made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Something's not right. Something's not right. Sam, see, come on out now," I stuttered. Light spilled in from the doorway, but it didn't illuminate enough of the room for me to search. I slowly stepped toward the center of the room, where a string hung down from a single bulb in the ceiling. With one hand, I kept a hold of the stick. With the other, I reached out to search for the string. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there somewhere. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and at that exact instant, my hand brushed against hair. Long, greasy hair at my shoulder height. Sam wasn't that tall. The hair was tangled and long. I yelped and jumped back, startled by the door and the hair simultaneously. Sam giggled. "Do you know how the clock ticks?" It came from my left, along the wall. The hair had been to my right. What else was in here with us? I was paralyzed. I couldn't see a damn thing. My phone was upstairs, so I couldn't use that as a flashlight. The ceiling light was somewhere in front of me, and the door was somewhere behind me. Every time I started to reach out, I remembered touching the greasy hair and recoiled. "Charlie," I called upward, hoping he could hear me, hoping he was awake. "Tick-tock, tick-tock," Sam said again. My brain instantly remembered the sound the clock had made the night before. It was the same voice, faintly a voice, and faintly background noise at the same time. "Sam," my voice hoarsely whispered. I had to throw up again. I swallowed bile and felt one more time for the string. It brushed my hand, and I jumped back before realizing that I was feeling string, not greasy hair. Resolutely, I launched my hand out and grabbed at the string. It swung into my hand, and I yanked on it hard. The single bulb buzzed to life, and something moved to my right. I screamed at the top of my lungs when I saw white and black. It's taken me a long time to place the shape, but now I'm certain. A deer's skull, partially covered by stringy hair, darted away from the light, circling behind me. In absolute terror, I squeezed my eyes shut and didn't dare open them. In the battle for fight or flight, I turned into the ostrich, burying my head and hoping it didn't see me. I started sobbing and wanted to run for the door, but I was too scared to open my eyes. "Mommy," Sam called from my left. I didn't respond. I was sobbing too hard. "Mommy, help, I'm stuck." Very, very slowly, I moved one finger and looked to the side. Sam was huddled up on the top shelf. I couldn't see his face, but I saw jeans and his favorite shirt. "See, come down and let's go," I whispered. "I can't. It's going to get me," Sam whimpered. I tried hard not to sob again. "Come and get me, please," he begged. I fought through the terror and stepped toward the shelf, still covering my face and using a small gap in my fingers to navigate. When I reached the shelf, I closed my eyes and held my arms up. "Climb into my arms, Sam. I'll get you down and we'll go get your dad." My voice broke at the end. "I'm stuck. My shirt is caught," he cried. Okay, I said, trying to be brave for him. "Guide my hand to where it is, and I'll get you loose." He paused. "It's at the back of the shelf. You can't reach." I bit my lip to stop its trembling. With both eyes still closed, I placed my hands on the top shelf and my foot on the bottom shelf. The stick was placed on the shelf so I could use both my hands. I hoisted myself up so I could reach and balance precariously. "Where is it, honey?" I asked, refusing to open my eyes. "Reach here," he said, and I could feel him rotate so I could reach over him. I did, and my hand ran straight into a mess of tangled, greasy hair. My eyes opened in shock. It stared back at me for only a millisecond. In that millisecond, it spoke, not with words, but in my head. "Do you know how the clock ticks? It is fed by death." The shelf under my feet collapsed, and as I fell, my hands pulled the shelf until it toppled over, coming down on top of me. I woke up in the hospital, much to Charlie and Sam's relief. It was a tumult of information and questions. They asked why I was down there, and instead of sounding insane, I said that I'd been searching for Sam again, just in case. Sam had been found walking on the road in the general direction of the hiking spot. He wasn't very far, thankfully, and was unharmed, when Charlie practically yelled, asking why the hell he had left in the middle of the night alone. Sam said he needed to find another stick to stop the monsters. The police were, of course, recommending that he talk to a psychologist. They'd overheard the conversation. Charlie didn't wake up until the police were at our door with Sam in hand. That was about an hour after the shelf had collapsed on me. Sam and Charlie had gone looking for me in the house and found me under the collapsed shelving. The police had been right there, thankfully, and I was rushed off to the hospital. Some of my ribs were broken, and so was my left leg. The shelf that had collapsed on me had held our camping tent, the fake Christmas tree, and a few other half-empty boxes. I was lucky that it wasn't the food storage shelving. The door was locked when they got to it, and the key wasn't in the lock, so they had to break it down. The second Sam saw the scene, he apparently stood over me in a protective stance, looking all around. Charlie left to get the police before they left upstairs. A couple of days after I got released from the hospital, and after Charlie had recovered from a flu that knocked him off his feet, I got to talk to Sam. I asked him outright what had been going on. It took a few minutes of him denying that anything was wrong. "I saw the monster," I admitted, which a parent really shouldn't do to their child. "You did?" he asked incredulously. I nodded. "You and Dad never saw them before. What did you see them?" "Them?" I asked nervously. Sam told me what had been happening for the last few weeks. He had stumbled upon the stick by literally tripping over it. It had spoken to him, and he took it to play with it. Whenever he had the stick, he could see the monsters. They were scary, but they stayed away when I pointed the stick at them, he said. A few of them had followed us home, walking alongside us on the trail. They came into the house at night and snuck around. They came into Sam's room, our room, everywhere. They told me that someone had to die. They told me that you had to die. So, he offered the monsters toy sacrifices to satiate their hunger. But they were unsatisfied. Whenever I didn't have the stick, I could feel them try to grab me. But they stayed away whenever I had the stick. They kept telling me that your time was up. Whose time? Yours, Mommy. They sat with him at night and changed TikTok at him. They tried to convince him to put the stick down. They offered him candy that the big, blurry man pulled out of thin air. At school, they followed him and said they would hurt people until he put away the stick. 5 teachers and 30 students got the flu while they threatened that. He held on to the stick as often as he could and patrolled the house at night, to keep them out of my room. That was until I took the stick. Apparently, he had grabbed the stick from a skeleton in the woods. It looked like an animal's skeleton. He had seen another one just like it when he got the first one, so he was going to go back and get the second one so the monsters would stop smiling. One had followed him on the streets, he said, but now they were all gone. And after looking through the mess of the collapsed shelving, so was the stick. Sam told his psychologist about our conversation. His psychologist told me very angrily that I should not have admitted anything like that because it fed into his delusions. He was being looked at for possible schizophrenia. I'm thinking I should be tested too. How else do I explain everything that happened? One detail stands out that I can't explain. I had unlocked the door to the storage room and left the key in the handle. So why was the key found dangling from the light bulb string? Third story. I will never go deer hunting again. My favorite place to visit when I was a kid was my grandparent farmland in Wisconsin. We visited often because they only lived a couple hours away from us, and we would typically spend the weekend. My grandfather had retired from farming, but he still kept some cows and rented out his fields to a younger local farmer who grew corn there most years. The remaining land is woodland. We often went on hikes to look for deer or other wildlife and to just see the beautiful country which I, as having grown up in the city, craved. One thing that my grandfather, his relatives, and eventually me also used the land for was hunting. The land, full of thick forests and cornfields all around, was ideal for hunting deer. My grandfather had hunted deer on that land his entire life, and he had always wanted me to hunt there once I was old enough as well. Eventually, of course, I did, and this story would not exist if I hadn't. And God, do I wish I hadn't. I started hunting when I was 13. There was a particular weekend set aside for youth hunters before the main season began. That year, I was set up in an old, broken-down wagon that washed over a grass field surrounded by trees on all sides. That day, we hadn't seen any deer until the sun had started to set. That was when I saw the first deer I would ever shoot. It was such an exciting experience, and getting a deer felt so satisfying. Also, it was a way I had been able to bond with my father and grandfather, and I felt I had made them proud. I got to do something they had done their entire lives. The next couple of years were of similar experience. I hadn't had a reason to stop hunting. I loved it. My feelings and excitement towards hunting were quickly killed off after what I experienced during one hunting season. I was about 16, and by this time I was too old to participate in the youth hunt weekend. I now had to hunt during the same time as everyone else, in the frigid, cold middle of November. My grandfather's brothers all hunted on the same land, and there was a sort of agreement that everyone who had hunted the land would take a share of the meat from the deer that anyone got. Everyone also had their sort of designated stands or places they would stay at during the day. We shifted around sometimes, but on this particular day, I ended up back in the wagon stand I had been in previous years. I hadn't seen a single deer all day, and sitting around, freezing my ass off really killed the thrill of it all. I heard gunshots on and off all day, mostly very distant ones. As the day approached nightfall, a crack broke through the frozen air. It came from somewhere in front of me, past the field and woods I was watching over all day. It wasn't far. It must have been on my grandfather's land, and I knew both my grandfather and my father were set up in their own stands in that direction. Between me and them was a trail that went through the woods and opened up in another field. I had hoped it was one of them who had been able to get their deer, and I was excited at the thought, as we hadn't been having very much luck this year. Not long after, only a few minutes or so, a doe jumped out from the tree and dashed quickly across my field. It must have been running from the shot I had just heard, either along with the deer they had shot or having been spooked by the noise. I didn't shoot this one. I was after a buck, and I wasn't going to waste my shot on a target moving so fast. I hunkered down and waited to see if a buck would come out before nightfall. I was much more on edge and excited at the possibility now. I had heard a very close gunshot and finally seen a deer. Unfortunately, my buck never came, and I was left empty-handed. Disappointed, I gathered my things, climbed out of the wagon, and made the long, cold walk back through the darkness. I had to take the cow's path from the pasture up to the bar that sat across from my grandparents' house. This required walking on mud and manure that was luckily frosted over and too hard for me to sink into. I eventually made it back to see my grandfather and father outside. They were hooking up a small trailer to a four-wheeler. We exchanged our accounts of how our hunting went, and I told my dad that all I had seen was the single doe from a while earlier. He let me know my grandfather was the one who fired the shot earlier and had gotten himself a nice buck. However, it ran far, and they had spent hours tracking it. He said that they did find it, and he asked if I would come with and help pick it up. I was more than happy to help. I was ecstatic for my grandfather who had been able to get himself a buck. I hopped on the trailer with my father, and my grandfather drove up around the corner of their driveway to the gravel road. There was no sunlight left at this point, and this was the countryside, so the dark of night was truly dark. The only thing visible was what the lights of the four-wheeler unveiled. After a couple minutes on the road, we took a left onto a trail through the woods. We kept on this trail for a while. I don't remember how long exactly, but I remember thinking of how deep in the woods we must have been with each tree we passed and each new shadow the headlights cast into the forest beyond. Eventually got to where they had left the deer. It was nice, I remember that much. A good-sized buck with 8 or 10 points. I congratulated my grandfather. I got closer, and something was very off to me. Where the deer had a bullet wound. It was shot straight through the heart, a textbook shot. If you have ever hunted deer, you know that the heart is what you always aim for if possible. A deer can't get far without a working heart, just as you or I. Somehow this thing was able to run an extraordinary distance after my grandfather had shot it so perfectly. It was from a .270 Winchester round, and one specifically made for hunting as well. This didn't make any sense to me. Since they had already gutted it and brought it to the trail, all we had to do was load it up and bring it back to be stripped for meat. My grandfather took it to his brother's house, which was closer to that trail, and where they were already cleaning up a deer someone else had shot that day. I was expecting to be given a task related to collecting the meat, such as labeling bags and bagging up the meat or something of the sorts, but my father had something else he needed me to do. My father told me he had forgotten his bag with his binoculars, ammo, and some other items when he had left his stand to assist my grandfather in tracking down the deer he had shot earlier. I knew what stand he was in, and I told him no problem. I would go grab his bag and be back in no time. I took my father's truck. My father had been set up in a stand on the corner where the massive, already harvested cornfield met the trail through the woods and to the much smaller grass field where I had been set up in the wagon stand. It was impossible for me to drive the same way that I used to walk back when the sun had gone down earlier. The truck would have a rough time getting down the manure-covered trail I had taken to get back, and even then, it couldn't get into the grass field or the trail after so I could get to the stand. I had to drive around the roads to the opposite side of the massy cornfield and walk my way through it until I got to his stand. I hadn't driven my father's truck before, so just a trip on the gravel roads was nerve-wracking enough. Once I had gotten around and saw the opening for the truck to pull in, I drove up so the headlights of the truck pointed straight ahead at the field. I realized I had greatly underestimated the size of the field. Leaving the headlights of the truck on to light up the field to at least some degree, I stepped out and began my very, very long walk across the field. Given the brutal weather turned even colder with the sun down, I was still bundled head to toe. I want to mention this detail because along with the snow, my mobility was quite restricted and I could only walk so fast. I knew that there were bears in this neck of the woods, made evident by the trail camera my grandparents had. I believe I was well within reason to still be carrying a rifle with me as I set out to retrieve my father's bag. It was an old .30 semi-automatic carbine from World War II. Not the most powerful or accurate rifle, but I figured it would be the nicest to have if I needed to defend myself from something. I kept it slung around the front of me, using my right to hold it close and keep it from bouncing around, and my left hand held a flashlight. I watched just about every other step, as I had to traverse over little nubs of what was left of the stalks of corn that had previously populated the field. I alternated my view from the ground in front of me to the field and trees far ahead of me. The headlights from the truck cast a shadow from the remains of every stalk in the field and the trees beyond, leaving a million shadows cast on the field, pointed towards the woods. Even though I had lit the field nicely for myself, it still felt far too dark for my comfort. The closer I got, the more I felt my ridiculous paranoia clouding my mind with random thoughts. I felt as though a wolf would come from the woods, flank around me, and attack me from the side. I actually stopped in my tracks and panned around to look for something in the field to be moving towards me. I did this a few times on my way to the stand. Each time, there was nothing. It was completely illogical fear that made me look in the first place. I had no clue what was getting to me, but it only got worse the longer I was out there. I chalked it up to it being late, dark, and me being alone in an empty field and the vast forest in front of me. Who wouldn't have some offsetting fears or imaginations? I found myself walking faster, stubbing the front of my boots into the ends of the corn stalks. I told myself that the faster I get the bag and get back, the sooner I'll be relaxing in front of the television in my grandparents' house and eating a nice warm meal. No matter what I told myself, the paranoia didn't stop. The scene before me, combined with the cold weather, surely didn't help, but neither did the dead silence in this field. Everything felt so dead out there. I couldn't hear anything but the snow beneath me as I took each step. Not so little as a gust of wind accompanied me. As I took another step, I could feel my foot pushed right back up as something moved beneath it quickly. The snow from the ground blew up like a landmine, and something sprung from the ground. I shrieked like a child and jumped back, nearly tripping over the broken stalks behind me as I did so. A rapid, fluttering noise came from whatever it was that had risen from the snow. My paranoia felt horrifyingly justified, but only for a moment as I quickly saw what it really was. A bird. What made me think I was being attacked by some monster in the snow was just a bird. What the hell was it doing? What type of bird burrows in a cornfield in the middle of winter like this? I calmed myself and began walking again, letting a brief laugh at myself before once again the paranoia settled back in. More images crowded my head, an angry bear charging out of the woods to maul me to death, some sort of weird serial killer stalking me from the trees before coming out to chop me up. As quickly as I could shake these ridiculous scenarios I was making up left and right in my head, I could not dismiss the feeling of eyes. The feeling like something was watching me felt all too real. It could have been anything, an owl, a rabbit, maybe even a deer. The thought that there was probably a creature of some kind watching me out in the woods that lay ahead of me was one that would not leave me. As I approached the stand, I slowed my pace and pointed the flashlight ahead at the base of the stand and the trail beyond. This is where the reach of the headlights seemed to end. The trail and woods on either side were too dark to see. Nonetheless, I approached the stand. Still, I was cautious of all the terrors I told myself could be hiding in the trees. I approached the makeshift ladder for the stand. The build of it overall was quite nice. A wooden watchtower would be the best way to describe its appearance. It was about 15 to 20 feet tall and had a nice sort of bucket at the top, more than big enough for a couple hunters to sit comfortably for a day. I flung the rifle to my back and clicked off the flashlight before putting it in my left coat pocket, but as I did so, I noticed something on the ground. The snow was depressed in a round sort of ball shape. I pulled my light back out and clicked it on. I thought I could tell what I saw looking at, but in my head, I told myself I must be confused. I was only more confused when I clicked the flashlight back on. This mark in the snow resembled a deer track, but it couldn't have been. At least that's what I told myself at the time. It wasn't possible. I was standing beside it, but rotated my left foot to be parallel. This thing was nearly as long as my boot. Impossible. Was there a moose in these woods? It was definitely possible, however, extremely unlikely. Was the track from a moose even this large? As one can imagine, this only heightened my paranoia. I quickly glanced around me to see if by some off chance whatever left that was still nearby. Again, I hadn't seen a thing. I put the flashlight back in my pocket and made my way up the ladder. Sure enough, my dad's bag was sitting right at the top. I climbed my way up and into the little nest. I wanted to make sure he didn't leave anything else lying around, because there was no way in hell I would bring myself to make another trip out here tonight. There wasn't anything, so I zipped up the bag and slung it around my left shoulder, adjusting to make sure I could still get the gun around to my front and that nothing was tangled. I felt some sense of relief wash over me as the trip was half over. I just had to get back now. Being up in the stand gave me a sense of safety, something I wanted to hold on to. This made it hard to leave, but again I told myself it was just best to get this over with. I carefully swung myself around and got a good foothold on the top rung of the ladder and lowered myself to make the descent. It was then that I first heard it. A hysterical laugh burst out from behind me. I became as stiff as a board before quickly collapsing back into the stand from the ladder, rolling around to look behind me. My heart felt as though it would break through my ribs as I began hyperventilating. Wide-eyed and rifle raised, I looked around on the ground below to see who the hell made that noise. The laughing, which had felt close already, I now realized was far off but approaching. Somewhere to the right, out in front of the stand and in the woods. I ducked beneath the boards of the stand, so I could just barely see above them to the trail on the right. What broke from the tree line made my panicking heart shut down and sink into my chest. Emerging first was the blue and red hat, one of those jester-looking ones. The upper body was covered in a blue and red striped outfit, tore at the ends of the sleeves and at the legs. A clown. The detail that chilled me the most was its legs. The legs of a deer. It had to have been no less than 20 feet tall, and yet it was frightfully quiet. It didn't make a loud crunch in the snow as it passed. It didn't break any tree branches, and despite its immense size, it didn't shake the ground as it ran. This immense abomination was able to move dreadfully quiet. The only thing that made its presence apparent was the giggle it couldn't seem to stop. It darted across the trail and into the dark woods beyond. I couldn't make out its face because of the distance between us. I sunk into the stand, with the rifle now clutched and held tight as I tried to wrap my head around what I had just seen. Why, oh God, why clown? I hated clowns. They absolutely terrify me. Why here? In the woods, in the middle of the night, in November? This wasn't possible. It had to be some sort of nightmare, I assured myself. But I was awake. This was real. All I could do was sit still and try to make sense of it. I had to have sat in silence for 10 minutes, wishing I were dead rather than there, with whatever this monster was. I covered my mouth so as to not scream. I was in complete shock and panic. Soon enough, I heard it coming back from somewhere straight behind me, the same laugh from off in the distance, becoming louder as it approached. I sank into the stand, laying flat and praying it wouldn't come to me. It slowed its laugh, each chuckle slower than the last before it let out one extraordinarily loud final bellow that echoed through the woods before it fell silent. I knew it had to still be there, and that it was coming, but I didn't expect how fast it did. Across from me was a gap with the ladder. In only a split second, I saw its massive hand, if you can call it that, reach up and grip around a tree from across the path. A long, cold black hand with nails more closely resembling uneven claws. It stopped moving. What was it looking at? I heard a softer grunt before the hand moved away, and I could hear the snow crunch as it shuffled to my left, out into the field. I heard another short giggle come from the field. I slowly got onto my knees and shuffled in the stand to the edge where I could poke my head over and see. I saw it, standing still in the field, staring at the headlights of the truck, just like a deer might be caught in them. I could also see the thing in better lighting now. Getting a look only made it worse. I saw a massive cloud of breath escaping its lungs, lit up by the light from the truck. Its head bobbed up and down as its chest filled with air and excreted it. The legs remained still, as if they were rooted in the ground. The arms were massive as well. Despite the height of the creature, they hung low. It just stood there for a few minutes, and I was left in awe. I noticed there were other deer in the field. About 4 does, a few fawns, and a smaller buck had all walked onto the field with this thing. They carefully observed the truck and headlights, but didn't seem to have any sort of fear towards this horrendous creature standing among them. The deer acted as if it didn't exist, as if it wasn't a threat or was just one of them. It again started laughing with an impossibly deep voice. This still didn't faze the other deer. It turned and started barreling towards the path again. I quickly ducked and waited for it to pass. This time it didn't turn into the woods and kept on down the path. I lay back down. I was so shaken and afraid I again had to cover my mouth and use all the energy I had to muffle my uncontrollable whimpers. The tears running down my face felt freezing. I had to think of a way to get out of here, but how? The thing could swing back around at any moment, and who the hell knows what it would do if it caught me in the open field. I sat, head hung, and eyes closed until I could calm myself to composure and contemplated my options. It seems to like the trails and open fields, and I figured it had to be too large to be able to traverse through thick forest quickly. I needed to take my chances through the woods. I could stick with them all the way to my grandparents' house, but it was going to be a long walk. Or I could stay where I was. I concluded that this was not an option. Of how much I had seen it already, and given that it was tall enough to just look into the stand if it felt curious, staying wasn't safe. I liked this area too much. I made a plan to move once I was calm enough to get down the ladder safely. I thought I ought to sit like I was until then. What felt like moments later, I heard leaves crunch from below. I snapped my head up. I felt drowsy. Had I fallen asleep? Yes, somehow I had. I quickly regained my wakefulness after I reminded myself of the situation I was in. I popped my head back over the edge again to get a quick look. As I was up, I felt something push against the back of my neck like a light gust of wind. I saw the air come from the sides of my head. It was warm like a breath. I snapped around and found myself face to face with the monster. It had its demonic hands gripping the corners of the stand and was peering right into it, right at me. I could finally see its wretched face. Wrinkly, crusted skin covered in pale white makeup. A long, bright red nose. The shape of a human's, but far too large. Eyes black and bright yellow, just like a deer. The face looked like it was constructed in the pits of hell and let loose into the world above. The second it realized I was looking back, its smile widened inhumanly wide, and its cheeks rose out of twisted excitement. With a row of shining white, sharp teeth and a disgusting black liquid dripping out of its mouth, it began laughing sadistically again, and yet neither the mouth nor the throat seemed to show any movement. I screamed, but reacted quickly. I brought the rifle to my shoulder and popped off a round right at its head. The shot cracked through the night as I sat up quickly from the boards I had been resting on. Still in the stand, still sitting. I took a glove off and lightly touched the barrel of my rifle. Realizing it wasn't warm, I had not actually shot. None of that had happened. Relieved as I was, and hopeful that it was all a vivid nightmare, I was quickly disappointed. The laugh boomed through the woods again. This time its voice sounded as if it was fragmented into many others. It sounded as if a choir of demons were laughing in sync with each other before a deep, booming voice from the distance spoke. "Did I scare you, boy?" Followed by another round of laughter. I had to move now. I retrieved my things and quickly made my way out of the stand, allowing myself to fall the last 6 feet. Picking myself up quickly, I took off into the woods across the trail. I dashed through the trees as quickly as I could, rifle still in hand. I heard the laughter emerge in the trail again behind me. It had reached the stand already. It let out another shrieking bellow into the night, this one much longer and louder than before. It was angry. Even with the distance I had put between myself and it, my ears were in pain after hearing it. I kept on running through the woods that I was surely dead at this point. That thing would find a way to get to me, no matter how deep in the woods I ran. I cleared my head of these doubts and focused on just running, my only chance. To my misfortune, it caught up quite fast. No more than a few minutes after I had left the stand, and it was on my tail. I didn't hear it sooner because it was as quiet as a deer might be running through the woods would. When it got close, it couldn't contain its excitement and broke out into another fit of laughter as it clawed at the trees, pushing them aside to catch up. I knew my rifle couldn't do much to this thing, but I had to try. I couldn't see a thing in the darkness, but I turned and started popping off rounds at its chest, the most obvious and hard to miss target I could pick. It was still a good 30 or 40 feet behind me, and there were a lot of trees between us. It didn't seem to have an effect. I turned and kept on for about 30 seconds before I was reminded that I couldn't outrun it, and it was even closer now. I turned a corner and twisted to get a line of sight as I realized it had closed the distance between us. It tripped on something and fell, its upper body hanging on a big tree right above me with its right arm and head locked between a branch and the trunk. It reached out with its right arm. I jumped back trying to escape the grab, but I failed. Its hand fit around my entire torso as it jerked me up towards its face. The head was shaking like an angry dog as it opened its mouth wide again. I could see the hate in its eyes. For whatever reason, maybe a desperate last-minute measure, I clicked on my flashlight and pointed it at this monster's eyes. It tilted its head away in a fast jerk to escape the light of my flashlight. Given this momentary opportunity, I raised the rifle still on my right arm and popped a few more shots off, this time at its head. I was tossed to the ground as it reacted. It fell from the tree and let out a loud, painful cry while covering its face with its hands. This made my ears feel as if they were about to explode. I picked myself back up and took off as fast as I could once again. I heard it get up, now crying and screaming in a more human voice as it ran off into the night once again. I just ran as fast as I could and for as long as I could muster, and you best believe I made a good distance running off of that much adrenaline. I only became more excited when I saw lights. They appeared to be some sort of yellow light, like that from headlights on a four-wheeler or car, and I hoped that's what they were. I picked up my past, but then stopped myself in my tracks. When I got close enough to get a clear visual on the light source, my hope turned to even more dreadful confusion. I saw a tent like you might expect to see from an old carnival. It was striped black and white up and down. It was round and came to a little point at the top. The lights had been strung all along the edges at the top of the frame. Bright yellow light bulbs, each one, in order, shut off every so often and turned back on to give that sort of illusion that a ball was rolling through them. What made even less sense was the ground it sat on. There was a circular patch of perfectly green, even grass around the whole thing. There was not a single tree in this perfect little grassy disc out in the middle of the woods. I stepped onto the grass, cautiously. I don't know why I had such curiosity after having just escaped a monstrous abomination, but it didn't stop me from wanting to check out this tent. I approached the tent and then walked around to try and see if it had some sort of entrance. As I was coming around, I saw a huge beam of the same yellow light escaping what I thought had to be the entrance. Right when I was about to go up and open it, I faintly heard the cries coming from the woods again. I jumped back into the trees and got low to the ground. I knew now that there was no outrunning this thing, so I ought to wait and let it pass. Eventually it broke out of the trees and into the grass area right before me. Still gripping one hand over its face, it pulled open the entrance to the tent, unleashing a huge flash of light into the night. It climbed head first until it was miraculously all the way inside. I just sat in silence and kept a close eye on the tent. After it had gone in, I didn't hear any noises from the creature anymore. No cries, screams, horrid laughter or speaking. After a few minutes, the light bulbs on the tent shut off one by one, and the light coming from inside faded until it was gone. I still laid there for another few minutes, left confused yet again. Slowly, I climbed to my feet and started walking through the woods once again. I kept a more slow and steady pace. I wasn't sure if this was over or if running was even the best option at this point, so I just stuck with my slow, steady, and quiet walk. Soon enough, I found a road and followed it until I found my grandparents' place again. My grandmother was the only one there. She let me know my father and grandfather had gone out to look for me. I called up my father who, by some miracle, had a connection out there. I told them to get back. I had a long, drawn-out screaming match to tell them to get out of there as quickly as possible, but I wasn't listened to. Luckily, they came back, perfectly fine, but having seen nothing. That night, I tried to tell the truth and tell it as straight as possible to my family, and they didn't have much to say in return. I'm sure some of them felt I was losing my mind, and I suppose that conclusion would make sense. I was assured that if that tent was there, and if there were any tracks left, we would see it in the morning. I didn't sleep that night for any number of reasons you might imagine. Despite having gone through what I had, I wanted to go back and find everything and prove I wasn't crazy, because the longer I thought about it, the less sense it all made. Maybe I did lose my mind. The next day, we all went out and found absolutely no remnants of the creature and no mysterious tent or the plot of grass it sat on. I don't believe I'll go hiking out on that land anymore, or maybe in any woods. I certainly don't think I will ever hunt again. I have a profound fear of the forest at night that I have yet to shake. For a while, I believed I was insane, but as I write this, I realize I can't be. I did shoot my gun that night. We found the brass. I was picked up by that thing. Everything about that night is still vivid in my memory. I saw everything so clearly, and I will never forget it. I don't know if that thing has a tie to that land in Wisconsin, or if it resides in other woods, or maybe it isn't bound to any forest. Maybe a time? Another condition of some sort? I am looking for answers, but I have failed to find any that make any sense. If anyone has ever seen or heard of anything like this, I need to know. Fourth story. Wendigo. It's been months since we finally put that hell behind us, but I still feel uneasy at night. Almost 1 year ago, my girlfriend was kidnapped, and the police had no luck with the case. I moved in with my two friends, Reagan and Jim. My girlfriend began sending me weird texts, and we all got scared. One night, Reagan and Jim went to the movies and didn't come back. A week after their disappearance, Reagan showed up at the house, bloodied and naked. She told me about how she and Jim were drugged. She told me how she was kept in a basement and how she was raped. She told me she saw another girl in that basement. I knew it. I knew it was Victoria. 2 days after Reagan got home, we set off to find this house of horror. After she told me everything that happened to her, she told me she knew where she was being kept. I have one distinct memory while being transported. A stop sign. It had a cross street on it. I read it. Whitney Ranch and Patrick Lane. She paused for a moment before continuing. The basement wall was all brick. All the houses around here are made of stucco. I bet it sticks out like a sore thumb. I was skeptical. A kidnapper wants to blend in. Whatever this thing or this guy is, he's not holed up in some brick mansion. Why not? She asked. How many weird-ass houses do you see every day you drive? Do you barge in there demanding to know if there are any prisoners in the basement? Shit, let's go there and ruin this guy up. Right? You're probably thinking that we should just call the police. The thing is, the last time I called the police, I found a severed finger in my house. The next time I called the police, Reagan and Jim were kidnapped. When I called the police again, Reagan was delivered to my doorstep in an absolutely disgusting condition, on the verge of death. Well, before we had our talk, we found something else in the house. A whole hand and a note. More police begets more limbs. So we went to Patrick and Whitney. We saw no mysterious brick house. We searched the surrounding neighborhood every day that week. Finally, we found it. A house made of brick, just like Reagan said. It was small, 1 story tall. It was unkempt, but that's not saying much in this neighborhood. Aside from the building material, the house looked like any other house on the block. Reagan looked nervous, and I sure as hell didn't want to be here. So I told her, you know we can still go back, right? He has Jim, Alex. That may have been Jim's hand. That girl with me in there. That could have been Victoria. She was right. Do we knock? I asked. No. We wait. Our car was parked on the other side of the road adjacent to the house. We waited and waited. Reagan assured me that the kidnapper, a man who called himself Wendigo, left the home at least once a day. We watched the place in shifts during nightfall. Finally, around 4 a.m., the front door opened. I shook Reagan awake. Someone walked out of the house. A tall man. The guy had to be at the very least 7 feet tall. He was skinny, and he was wearing a tuxedo. It was ripped and ragged. Holy shit, I said. He's just like you described. He's even wearing that weird sack on his head. He locked his door and looked around. We ducked under the windows. Slowly I crept up. He was gone. He'd leave for hours at a time. So now is our chance, Reagan said. I was about to unlock the door when something hit the car with a loud thud. Shit, I screamed. My windshield was cracked, and it took a second to process what had hit it. It was a human head, horribly disfigured, pieces of it missing. I turned on the car and was ready to gun it when I heard glass break and Reagan scream. She was being pulled out of the passenger window. Just drive, damn it. She kept screaming at me to gun it, but I knew if I drove right now, she would either be pulled out or have her back broken. I opened my door and circled around the car. We had no weapons on us, since our plan was to sneak in and call the police from the inside after finding Victoria and Jim. I was about to tackle the guy, but I just stood there. This was no normal guy. His hands were blood-soaked, his nails long and sharp. His movements were erratic and jerky. He pulled Reagan out of the window and tossed her at a nearby wall. She blacked out. "What are you?" I asked. At least I think I asked. I don't remember if I spoke at all. I was so terrified. "I do not want her. She is filthy," he said. His voice was raspy and low. He stretched out random syllables and would stumble midword as well. "I want clean ones, only." I turned around and ran. Straight into his house. I heard his footsteps behind me. Erratic as hell. Thud, 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 thud. I turned my head to see how far away he was. I had a few seconds on him, which normally would have comforted me, but the way he ran. His legs were spread wide, and he took gigantic steps, almost like leaps, and flailed his arms. It would almost be goofy if it weren't for that inhuman speed. My lead was quickly disappearing. Then I remembered he locked his door. Well, shit. And here comes this psychopath running at me at full speed. So I turned around and stood there like an idiot. Right before he tackled me, I dove out of the way. He hit the door and fell to the ground. I started kicking him, and he was screaming. I saw a metal rod nearby, grabbed it, and smashed him over the face. He stopped moving. I should have decapitated the piece of shit, but Victoria and Jim could have been dying that very moment. I decided to call the police. I found his keys and opened the door. I immediately took out my phone to dial the cops. No reception, typical Sprint. I frantically walked around the place looking for the basement door, checking my phone the whole time. I opened a few doors and found nothing. His house was eerily normal. Finally, 2 bars. I dialed 911 and simultaneously opened a door. Holy shit. I stepped inside before I realized where I was. The smell was putrid and it was terrifyingly cold. It was a walk-in refrigerator. No shelves, no storage, just an empty and cold room with vents. And a floor covered in meat. Human meat. In some corners it looked like steaks, chopped up with intent. The rest of the place was just blood, body parts, and entrails. It was too late for my shoes. I stepped into what was literally an inch-high pool of coagulated blood. If it weren't for the adrenaline, I would have vomited. I closed the door and got out of there. I needed to find that basement. I looked at my phone. Call dropped. I tried dialing again, but it wouldn't go through. Luckily, I found the basement. I ran down it and turned on the lights. The smell was putrid here as well, but it wasn't rotting meat. It was shit. Literally the smell of piss and shit. On one end of the room, I saw a bed with chains on it, bolted to the floor. Reagan's bed. I looked at the opposite end. It was Victoria. She was completely naked, covered in God knows what, rocking back and forth with her eyes wide open, staring at the wall. She was so skinny. She literally looked like a skeleton. "Babe, Vic, it's me. I'm here, and I'll get you out of here." She kept rocking back and forth, slowly, in perfect rhythm. She was staring at a clock on the wall. It was broken, with the second hand repeatedly going back and forth by one interval. "Let's go," I screamed. Suddenly, she stopped moving and turned slowly towards me, her eyes still wide. She wasn't blinking. She stared right at me. No, It looked like she was staring through me. Her jaw opened, far beyond the point where it should have. I heard bones cracking, and she bared her teeth. I didn't have time for this shit. I ran to get her. I tripped, and I blacked out. I wish I could say this story had a hero's ending, but it didn't. I was lucky. Very lucky. The police traced the call, I guess, and got to me. We all woke up in the hospital. They didn't find this Wendigo psychopath, but they're searching for him. They didn't find Jim either. A horrifying thought went through my mind, and I asked them about that meat fridge. They said it would take them months to run all that DNA, and most of it would be unreliable due to the cross-contamination. Reagan and I were fine, but Victoria was in poor shape. We visited her at the hospital every day for months since then. The police department stationed an officer by her door during the night for her safety. I thought that was great of them. The guy was real nice, too. Kept her company and genuinely seemed to care about her condition. I wondered if he would be able to protect her if that psychopath showed up again. He was tall as hell and had a gun. I couldn't complain, I guess. I tried talking about the case with a cop before, but every time he would tell me there was nothing he could tell me. For some reason, I trusted him. Heck, I still do. I had so many unanswered questions about everything, but every time I'd think about asking one, I felt as though I didn't need to. To be honest, I kind of stopped caring about all this anyway. I moved on, you could say. So much so, I'm not even going to bother to proofread this post. Usually I'd comb through it several times to make sure I didn't make any glaring errors, but I'm just so tired. I need rest. Victoria is still in the hospital, and her condition doesn't seem to be improving that much, but there is always hope. Reagan and I will be waiting for her when she's better. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Till the end, subscribe to Horror in Detail for more videos. Drop your suggestions in comment section.